This is part 2 of lesson 3.2. In the last video, we began looking at properties of equality to help us explain our thinking when solving an equation. Remember, in this unit, we're trying to learn how to give reasoning for what we do and how we think. The properties of equality that we've been learning are some of those reasons. In this video, let's look at a few more. The three properties we're going to talk about are the reflexive, symmetric, and transitive property. These are all in your notes, and if you haven't read those, go ahead and do that now. The reflexive, symmetric, and transitive property come up quite a bit in the proofs that we look at, so we want to understand them. We want to understand them pretty well. First is the reflexive property. It says here that A is equal to A. The reflexive property states that any real number is equal to itself. That seems pretty basic, right? It is, but you'd be surprised how often that comes in handy when proving something to the point that you're absolutely certain. So that's what the A equals A means, that a number is equal to itself. 2 is equal to 2. And this AB equals AB means the same thing. It's just saying that when I'm looking at a segment, the length of that segment is equal to itself. And remember, AB is denoting that we have a segment and it has a particular length. The same thing here for the measure of angle A equals the measure of angle A. Okay? All that's saying is that the measure of an angle is equal to itself. I just want you to recognize that no matter if we're just looking at a number or looking at the length of a segment or the measurement of an angle, which are all just numbers as well, quantities, okay, then the reflexive property holds for all of it. Next is the symmetric property. The symmetric property says that if we have two terms equal to each other or two quantities equal to each other, then it doesn't matter which side of the equal sign they're on. They're still going to be equal. So if A is equal to B, then B is equal to A. I can switch them around because they're symmetrical. And it still works. Okay? The equality still holds. And lastly is the transitive property. The transitive property states that if I have two terms equal to each other, like A equal to B, and again you could substitute different numbers or terms in for this. If A is equal to B and B is equal to C, then A is equal to C. Notice how both A and C are equal to B, and if they're both equal to B, then they're equal to each other. Okay, that's what the transitive property is saying. Okay, this is a really important one, because if you can show that one term or one length of a figure is equal to something else, and that another term is equal to that same thing, then you can show that they're equal to each other. Okay, so this is one we'll definitely use a lot. So again, if A is equal to B and B is equal to C, then A is equal to C. And remember, over here, it's just showing the same thing, just in terms of segments and in terms of angles. Let's look at some examples of making sure we understand these properties, reflexive, symmetric, and transitive. So the instructions for 5, 6, and 7 say to name the property of equality that the statement illustrates. Okay? So which property is being used here? So if number 5, it says if the measure of angle 6 is equal to the measure of angle 7, then the measure of angle 7 is equal to the measure of angle 6. Okay? What property of equality allows us to say that? Well, if you just look right above in your notes, okay, that's the symmetric property. The symmetric property allows us to say that these two quantities, okay, no matter which side of the equal side they're on, are equal to each other. Okay, so whatever the measure of angle 6 is and whatever the measure of angle 7 is, if I flip them around on either side of the equal sign, it doesn't change their value. It doesn't change if they're equal or not. Okay, that we can do that. That's symmetric. Number 6 says 34 degrees equals to 34 degrees. Okay, so a quantity is equal to itself. Which property is that? That's the reflexive property. The reflexive property says that a quantity or a value is equal to itself. Last one, number 7. the measure of angle 1 is equal to the measure of angle 2. The measure of angle 2 is equal to the measure of angle 5. So the measure of angle 1 is equal to the measure of angle 5. Okay? If it helps, I can use colors. Measure of angle 1, measure of angle 1, 2, 2, 5, 5. Okay? So measure of angle 2 is equal to both the measure of angle 1 and the measure of angle 5. Okay? Or to say it another way, the measure of angle 1 and the measure of angle 5 are both equal to the measure of angle 2. Well, if they're both equal to the same thing, then we could say that they're equal to each other. Okay? The measure of angle 1 is equal to the measure of angle 2, the measure of angle 2 is equal to the measure of angle 5, so the measure of angle 1 is equal to the measure of angle 5. What property is that? That's the transitive property. The transitive property that states that if two different terms are equal to the same thing, then those two are equal to each other, no matter what their measurements are. What we know is, it matters, they're going to be equal is the thing, and it doesn't matter to some degree what they are, but what we're seeing is that whatever measure of angle 5 is in measure of angle 1, if they're both equal to the measure of angle 2, then we know that they're ultimately equal to each other, so they'll be the same quantity.